you could join us today. I'm going to be in my office for a while until we get air conditioning fixed, and then we might move around a little bit. But this is pretty comfortable for me, kind of in my element. You'll remember that at the end of chapter 11 that Jesus had called himself gentle and lowly of heart, as opposed to the ones who were trying to force their way into positions of authority in the kingdom. Well, those people were following him around. You know, in chapter 12, we start out verse 1 that the disciples are going through a grain field and they're hungry. What were the Pharisees doing there? Well, they were following Jesus around trying to find something wrong with him. And, you know, it had been put down in God's law that farmers were not supposed to harvest the corners of their grain field. They were supposed to be reserved for the poor, so that the poor could come into the grain field and pluck the grain and rub it in their hands and eat it. Well, somewhere along the line, the wise people that had all these rules and regulations had said, well, if you pluck grain and rub it in your hands, that's harvesting and shucking, and that's work, and you're not supposed to do that on the Sabbath. And so they see these hungry disciples. It says they were hungry, and they're in the corner of the grain field that was reserved for people that were hungry, and they pluck some grain, they're rubbing it in their hands, and they're eating it. And the scribes and Pharisees said, they're doing what's not lawful to do on the Sabbath day. And so Jesus said, since we're talking about what's lawful and what's not lawful, how about King David, whenever his men were hungry, there was bread that was reserved just for the priests. It was called the showbread. It was unleavened bread, and they would put 12 cakes on a table every day. And whatever the priest didn't eat on that day, he threw away. Well, David and his men were running from King Saul, and they were hungry. And the priest said, have at it. Here's leftover showbread. Jesus said he did that and didn't break the Sabbath. Then he said, now talk about working on the Sabbath. He goes on to say, the priests break the Sabbath rules all the time because they have to trim the candles and put oil in the candelabra, and they have to cook the bread, put the bread on the table. And you know what? When a little boy was 8 days old, you circumcised him. And if that 8th day happened to be a Saturday, they did work on that Saturday, circumcising a child. Jesus said that in John chapter 7. And so he said those two things to the Pharisees. And basically he said this also, one greater than the temple is here, and one who is the Lord of the Sabbath is here. So those were two claims to being God. He said, there's one thing greater than the temple, and that's the God that you worship in the temple, and greater than the temple is here. And the one who instituted the Sabbath, and that everyone is going to have to answer to about their treatment of the Sabbath, is standing right here in front of you. So, cool it. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, Jesus said. The Sabbath is supposed to serve us and make us better and make us rested and get us refocused. It's not supposed to be some kind of a master over us. God bless you real good. All done.